we got a spicy one for you today, guys, because guess what? We were wrong. Or at least I think we were wrong. Because the more I watch that other video, the one where we reacted to the father getting tased in the face for following orders, the more I watch that, the more I think that our reaction could have been better. We should have seen some things we didn't. We should have understood some things we may have missed. Especially in this lawsuit, because there was a lawsuit filed afterwards and we learned a ton more about these officers and the situation that happened. You're definitely going to want to stick around to learn more. We're going to break down this lawsuit, what we think might come of it, and how maybe we can do a little bit better for you next time. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to get one thing clear, and that is, while we were watching that video, I had one thing in my mind, and honestly, I overemphasized it. But even more importantly, I failed to properly communicate it. So let's go through this. Let's do a legal analysis on the officer's commands, because a lot of you guys had comments about this. Your comments essentially were to the effect of, that guy was there legally in the first place. The father wasn't doing anything wrong. And I agree with you. That father was there legally. But the analysis doesn't end there. We have to go a step further and we have to say, did that officer still have the authority to give legal commands? And if the father failed to follow those legal commands, what happens? What's the consequences? That was kind of what's going through my mind while watching all this, but I didn't properly communicate it. So let's go through the actual law here in Colorado. And it states that no person shall willfully fail or refuse to comply with a lawful order or direction of any police officer with the authority to direct, control, or regulate traffic. So everyone says that that's not a lawful order, that's not a lawful order. First of all, that's debatable. I can link to a document from Yale where they debate this whole sort of topic from state to state and federally, what is a lawful order? But the law says that, or a direction from any police officer with the authority to direct, control, or regulate traffic. And that is what those officers were doing. They conducted a traffic stop. They had the authority to direct, control, or regulate traffic. And so they had the authority to lawfully command that he leave. I know you guys are going to disagree with that. I know it makes your blood boil. And it kind of does me too. But that's not the point here. The point is, what is the legal analysis? That officer had the authority to tell the dad to leave. He did. And so when he failed to do that, that really technically was a misdemeanor under Colorado law, a class 2 misdemeanor traffic offense. But that was very quickly overridden. That very quickly became kind of obsolete when, the officer's commands conflicted with each other immediately, when there's a very, very strong argument that the officer didn't even need to make those commands in the first place, right? With how they handled it afterwards, with the tasing and the violence that happened afterwards, that all kind of begins to take center frame here. But there is still that issue of, was it a lawful command or not? And I'm going to argue that yes, it was a lawful command, at least in theory. Then it became incredibly conflicting, incredibly sort of vague, and a whole host of other things happened. But it was a lawful command, at least in the beginning. That's really important. I know the internet goes wild for that, but you guys tune in to hear the legal analysis, and we're always going to give it to you straight. We're always going to call the balls and strikes as we see them. That is a very, very big part of that video as I was watching it. But in the end, and I didn't communicate this clearly, that all gets pushed to the side, and center frame is the officer's terrible, terrible actions after the fact. Hope that helps kind of clear up where I was coming from a little bit. I still think I need to do a better job of maybe slowing this down, explaining my thought process in the moment, but hopefully that provides a little bit of clarity on why we gave lower grades to the father, but even in the end, I would take that back and give a much, much higher grade to the father. All right, so here we go. The plaintiff, the father, has filed a lawsuit against basically everyone involved. Both officers, Trujillo and Noel, the sheriff in their capacity, the county, the board of commissioners, what do they call that? Head sheriff, right? The chief, this Derek Maurice guy. There's everybody involved is named in this lawsuit, and the introduction is a nice one with this little meme that these officers, this county was dumb enough to post that says, "The Lord trains our hands for war and our fingers for battle."
Just from the conduct of the officers that we saw in the prior videos, when dealing with the dad, we're definitely I can anticipate that their theme is going to be there's some failure to properly train these officers. They're going to try to hold liable the actual sheriff's department and possibly the county. They're going to show that these officers were, operating like this was the wild, wild west, and they didn't have to adhere to the Constitution. They can do whatever they wanted, and telling anybody to follow their orders. And if not, then, they were going to put hands on you. So this is what I'm immediately just getting from this first picture, is that these officers were, the plaintiff is going to argue that these officers were predisposed to violence against U.S. citizens.
Yep. And it's one thing to watch that arrest video and reach that conclusion, which most people do. Mm-hmm. But now you find sort of this outside source, right? These guys are taking these pictures and posting these pictures under their own, completely separate and apart from the incident. It really bolsters that theme, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's get into some of the facts. And when I say facts, I mean alleged facts. Just to be clear for everyone, you list out the facts, the alleged facts, and then later in this complaint, you'll see that they actually list out the violations, right? Mm-hmm. So the facts have to lead to those violations. And so that's why you wind up with a 52-page complaint here, is that they're going to list out everything in painstaking detail. Keep in mind, this is just written by the plaintiff's attorney, so it doesn't mean that they're actual facts yet. In reality, the defense counsel is going to deny almost all of these, right? And those will be things that are going to get sorted out as this case progresses. But a couple things right from the start here. They do point out that the defendant didn't do anything wrong. He just parked his truck back there. That was not a violation. And I agree with that, right? Then he starts getting these commands from really both officers, right? To leave.
Right.
The plaintiff correctly points out that, they were conflicting commands. They measured it apparently less than 1 second. After demanding you leave the scene, he then yells to stop. Mm-hmm. And we stop. I know we talked about that in our original video.
Right.
I mean, it's clear to anyone watching that this officer at best, the best interpretation is that he's confused. So very tough to follow those commands when they are conflicting within a second of each other. And we pointed that out.
Definitely.
Then this poor guy gets the pistol pointed in his face. They say it's less than 3 seconds after screaming at him to leave. Just crazy. It happens so fast. Some things we weren't sure about is exactly how that taser was used. It's hard to sort of understand. Mm-hmm. But in this sort of set of facts, they do get into how often and how the taser was exactly used. Talk to me a little bit about drive stuns.
Okay, so how the taser works, there's 2 methods of operation. You have what's called the drive stun. That's taking the actual taser device, less lethal weapon, without the prongs and putting it into contact with an individual's body for 5 seconds in order to incapacitate them. Various reasons why you may want to do it, because of the close proximity. The prongs may not deploy adequately from me to you as far as the distance goes. So it's easier for me to get in there, make contact with the taser, and have the same effect as far as incapacitating a person. The second approach is there is some distance, approximately like 8 to 15 feet. It would be a danger for us to get within, that 8 to 15 feet, but nevertheless, you're not following commands, legal commands. I need to somehow effect an arrest. So I'm going to deploy my taser with those 2 fish prongs that, you deploy them, they shoot out, connected to barbed wire, and those fish prongs hook underneath the top layer of your skin, and it sends approximately 30,000 volts of electricity through the body, completely rendering you incapacitated. for 5 seconds.
All right. So that's the difference between the drive stun. So let me just get this straight. I got my taser. I can pull off like a cartridge. It clips off, right? And then I can do contact, right? And that's going to drive. That's right. Or I put the cartridge in. I can shoot it like a projectile.
Exactly.
Got it. And that's where the 2 wires come out and they hook into the skin. All right. Got it. So here in this complaint, they say that the officer originally drive stunned him approximately 15 times so this is the officer that comes in on the passenger side, right?
Yes.
So at some point, we don't really see it, or at least I don't think we saw it.
No.
But he pulls out the cartridge, knowing as he's getting into that passenger side, he's going to drive stun him, and he does it 15 times while the guy's sitting in the driver's seat.
Correct. That's what I was able to take away from the portions of the video that we were able to see visibly.
Yep. All right. So then they get him out of the truck. He's handcuffed, and they drive stun him approximately 15 more times while he's handcuffed.
Right.
We mentioned at the time, whoa, this guy's in handcuffs. They got no good reason to tase him.
None.
Talk to me about this approximate, because at this point in the game, this is what begins essentially the filing of this lawsuit, right? So what is this based on?
So approximate is definitely the operative word with how they're pleading these factual allegations. In any case, there's a period of discovery, but especially in civil cases. That does not happen until after your complaint's filed, whatever defendant it is, they file their answer. Prior to that, one would ask, how do I get this information I need to include in a complaint if I'm a plaintiff? FOIA requests, open records requests. That's how you get the body-worn camera videos. That's how you get the police reports. That's how you get the officer's background information. That's how you see if they are a certified police officer in their jurisdiction. The open records request or a FOIA request is a plaintiff's attorney's friend because you get all this information and it's just more meat for your sandwich when you are compiling your complaint.
Eventually, though, as part of the discovery process, as this case proceeds, there will be depositions. There will be there'll be other documents that are going to have to be turned over, and we anticipate one of those being the log from this taser, right?
Oh, yes, definitely. So anytime an officer has been issued a taser, first they have to be trained on that less lethal weapons capabilities. Additionally, you have to test that weapon anytime you are going out on patrol, see if it operates or if it's malfunctioning. And anytime you deploy it, there is a computer log within that less lethal weapon that shows how many times you have used it for any particular incident. It shows the duration of time that you deployed that weapon. So that is definitely something that I anticipate these plaintiffs' attorneys are going to be seeking as far as documents in the discovery process.
And that's why right now it's approximate, but they'll get the exact details eventually.
The approximate, is based upon what they viewed in the video. I can only assume. Yeah. So they want to also, you don't want to lie. So approximate is what they were able to best gauge from the video.
And just to be clear, were you trained on the use of this taser?
Yes, I have been tased, and I have also tased people. So yes.
All right, speaking with some authority there.
Yeah.
And then so finally they say that, we commented this in the video. Like they got him in the back seat of this car. Why are they pulling this guy out? Well, when they did that, they say that they tased him 7 more times. So by this count, we're at 37 times that he's being tased. The final one being where the cartridge is in, they actually deploy the projectiles, one striking him in the lip, which we saw in the video, in the aftermath in the video. They included a photo here, and then another one striking him in the chest. So they give, at least here in this complaint, they give a little bit of explanation as to why they did get him back out of the vehicle. I know we were really confused by that, said there was a way better way to handle that. At least here they say that he was angered because Mr. Espinoza, the father, exercised his right to remain silent while it was in the back of the car. I think it goes without saying that, an officer cannot retaliate by slamming you on the ground and tasing you because you've exercised your Fifth Amendment right.
Yes, 100%. Your job is to uphold and defend the Constitution. So Acting out like this because a citizen chooses to exercise their constitutional rights is completely uncalled for.
Yep, absolutely. And is the basis for a pretty strong lawsuit here. They go on to say, again, additional things that we never would have seen in the video is that he deactivated his body-worn camera. And that, they reference it here, but there's no question that every department that has body-worn camera, they're going to have a policy about when you can or cannot deactivate that body-worn camera. Right. I have no doubt here that while they have this defendant in custody, especially shortly after drawing your weapon, deploying a taser, it's within the policy to keep that on.
Definitely. This is, they are directing these allegations toward the officer, but, they're also introducing the sheriff's department in because there's a clear policy on how that officer should have behaved with regard to his body-worn camera. So showing automatically a violation of department policy.
They also go on to say that there was a ambulance that was called. They took the barb out of his lip and everything, but then they did not take him to the hospital. They took him straight to jail. That is referenced here. Just as former law enforcement, you mentioned earlier, you deployed your taser. What are your thoughts on that in terms of, I don't know what the county's policy is, but just what are your thoughts on that as former law enforcement?
You always have to be concerned about the health and safety of the individual that you had to deploy that less lethal weapon on. Why? Because excited delirium is a real thing. You have seen a lot of people that have suffered in custody deaths after being tased. So immediately after you are involved in a use of force, if need be, I'm at least having paramedics come check you out and giving you some type of medical attention.
Yep, which they did, but they chose not to take him to the hospital. Right. I'm not, it's unclear to me if, I'm no medical expert, so it's unclear to me if that was the wrong decision, but they are sort of leading to that or alleging that here, that he maybe should have been taken to the hospital, especially in light of what happens next, which is apparently the officers say, radio in and say, get the chair, we're going to this guy up, which is a pretty bold statement, which according to this means that a restraint chair, right? Something where he's going to be tied down and actively restrained. Kind of crazy here.
Yeah. Like this right here, goes to state of mind. You see, what time these officers think it was. Clearly just, engaging in criminal behavior while wearing the uniform of a police officer is just sickening.
Again, at the time, I remember us saying, look, the father, Espinoza, has sort of calmed down. You can see it in his actions, in his demeanor. And he's the one that was just tased 37 times. Yet the officers, especially the one, was just going still at 100 miles an hour. Even after the fact, and everyone's handcuffed and in the back of the car, he didn't regulate himself to bring down his, his level of violence, really. And that's indicative, and that's the case that they're making here by saying, they're going to him up even when he gets to, even when they get him into the jail, which is a wild allegation. Right. And the next, again, things we never would have seen in the arrest video, but they're alleging that he lied in the police report. Specifically, that the white pickup truck parked approximately 5 feet behind the marked car.
Disputed by the body-worn camera. Obviously, we can see that it was way more than 5 feet.
Yep.
So this officer has a problem doing math and writing reports.
Apparently, yeah. They estimate that it was closer to 75 feet. And this is one of the things I'll say that I didn't fully grasp. I didn't fully realize during the time. It did seem to me, at least in the moment, that it was a bit closer than that. We even said, what if he just drives off and goes parks in the parking lot or like that? That's kind of the breakdown we were doing. Right. And my thought at the time was that he was kind of right in the mix. 75 feet back is a pretty decent, amount back. And I think that's really, really relevant here. And they even include a still from the body-worn camera showing that truck's quite a ways back.
Yeah, it places a lot of things in better context.
Yep, it really does. They talk about some of the allegations made in the police report that formed the basis for the criminal charges against the father. Criminal charges that seemed to be pretty quickly dismissed afterwards. But things like, the threat to the police officer, the truck being in motion and dragging the deputy forward when we just didn't see any of that in the video.
I don't know what video this police officer was looking at when he was writing this report, but clearly it couldn't have been his own.
Well, that's actually a great point because police officers do have the opportunity. There's nothing wrong with an officer viewing videos prior to writing their report.
At all.
In fact, most of our cases, the officer will put reviewed video prior to writing the report. And that's how they're able to write good, accurate, specific reports, at least in their mind, because it matches with what's on video. So this officer here either didn't watch it, straight up lied. I don't know.
Yeah, obviously, I think he was a sergeant or a lieutenant. So again, it's my strong assumption that he didn't bother to watch this, the body-worn camera, because obviously it's something new to a veteran officer. And looking at his behavior that we saw on the body-worn camera, he is probably like the way he remembered it is the way it happens, and that's that.
That's what he thinks, right? Yeah, exactly. But I think that's, sort of a minute point here, but like lends to the idea that this officer was at worst negligent and at best fictitious, lying in terms of writing his report because he had the opportunity to view his own video. Yep. And what he put in that report does not line up with the video. Another thing that's just an egregious error, and that's being kind, and a major error is I forgot to mention that I drive stunned this defendant, right?
Right. Just
didn't get included in the police report, which is wild. Says that the father took a fighting stance. We didn't see that. Then he nearly hit the officer. Again, we didn't see that. So just this report seems to be written in a way that's very favorable to the police officer and not matching what's on body-worn camera. Right. All right, we get it a little bit into the officer's history, specifically Trujillo. Pretty wild stuff here. This is a very, very strong claim against the department, right? Because let me just say, a plaintiff here is going to want to pull in the department and the county and the board of commissioners and all those things, right? It's not enough typically just to kind of pull in the officers themselves, the lone actors. Much stronger complaint to pull in and say that this was that the county bears responsibility for this, or the sheriff's department bears responsibility for this, both in terms of pulling in somebody with deeper pockets, but also pulling in somebody who has the power to actually enact change within the sheriff's department.
Of course, you have to bring in the powers that be, because they're the only people that can affect some type of reform based upon this incident. So, the officer alone obviously was not sufficient. So you need to get the sheriff and you need to get the board of commissioners in, especially, with the public attention that I'm sure this incident gained. The powers that be are really the ones that are going to, reform their department based upon this incident to ensure it doesn't happen again.
But that's essentially what they're asking for, this plaintiff. They're asking for monetary damages, no doubt. We'll talk about that. But also they're asking for injunctive relief, change within the organization.
Definitely.
We'll get into that at the end. All right, so now as it relates to Trujillo's background, according to this, he was convicted of harassment. He's got quite a list, actually, here. Let's see. He was charged with felony menacing with a weapon, and he pled guilty to disorderly conduct. He's charged and convicted of that harassment. Another disorderly conduct where he pled guilty. Another harassment. Cases in 2006, 2009, 1998, 1997. Also 5 restraining orders, 5 restraining orders, which you are not supposed to be able to own a weapon during that time. A pretty bad background just for a citizen, and appalling, almost unbelievable background for a law enforcement officer.
And how did your employer not catch wind of any of this?
They were negligent. That's the conclusion, right?
And that's probably one of the allegations that, if this guy was not didn't have the background to be certified as a police officer, then and you still hired him, then yeah, you were negligent in your hiring. If he was, able to be certified as a police officer because of each and every one of these incidents that happened throughout the time of his law enforcement career, you kept him on. You were negligent in retaining him as an employee for your department.
I mean, they go on to talk about other things about, the officer being intoxicated, suicidal, possessing an AR-15, arguments with family members over baseball cards. Like, it does not paint obviously, this is what the plaintiff's job is, right?
Sure.
But it does not paint a very good picture for Trujillo.
No, I mean, to be clear, the plaintiff, they aren't just, coloring these facts up out of nowhere. They have something based upon the documents that they have requested that supports those allegations. That's, a legal obligation we as attorneys have. What exactly do they have to support these allegations? We won't know until discovery, but there is some smoke there to that fire.
Yes, great way to put it. In 2017, Trujillo shot and killed an unarmed man while on duty. I know nothing about that incident, but that is included here, no doubt, as, to bolster sort of the crazy rogue, officer looking for a fight argument.
That has a tendency to be violent towards unarmed individuals like they were to the plaintiff.
Yep, exactly. So, and again, that they'll go deep into that, I'm sure, during this case and figure out what's there, and we don't know. So there's a lot there, right? They go into some of the policy violations, right? Like, when an officer can use physical force, and that probably does not include this because, they weren't necessarily trying to prevent an escape. They told him to leave. He didn't seem to be an imminent threat to anybody at the time, So a lot of policy violations occurred, both in the commands, in pulling out the weapon, the firearm, in using the taser, right? In fact, let's see here. The policy on tasers is what, Maurice?
Typically, you can't use a taser if an individual is passively resisting. So, if you tell somebody they're under arrest and they sit on the ground, you don't get to tase them. If there is some type of physical threat to you, and the taser would be the least restrictive means to assist you in effecting that arrest, then by all means. However, because a citizen is yelling at you or, they are laying on the ground, not turning over, that doesn't give you the authority to, tase them with 30,000 volts of electricity.
Sheriff's Department also has a policy against tasing somebody while they're in a moving vehicle, which is what happened here, it seems. So a lot of policy violations here, which again pull in the higher powers. Really relevant to make a stronger claim here.
Definitely.
So again, this is 52 pages long, but I think we covered sort of the main set of facts, the main set of things that were kind of perhaps missed in the original, where it would have been unknown or impossible to see in the arrest video, but are really relevant here to this case. So those are the facts as laid out here in this complaint, and those facts are needed. That's 35 pages of facts, which then give rise to the claims that we're going to go through here. It's kind of all things you know. First one being excessive force, right? That against policy and without legal justification, these officers used force. You guys understand that. So the second one has to do with
deprivation of rights under their state constitution. So they're saying by those officers using excessive force, they essentially violated, their rights as a Colorado citizen. To be free from, violence from government actors, to be free from, unreasonable arrest. We see that the dad was arrested. We see the level of force that the officers engaged in that was completely unreasonable and affecting, what appears to be a very invalid arrest. So they have a theory under the law for seeking relief.
The third claim here is that the officers had a duty to intervene on each other's behalf. Trujillo and Noel had a duty to stop their fellow officers from committing some of these violations, right? And they both breached that duty when they failed to do it. Simple as that.
Number 4, they're saying, the substantive due process rights were violated. So, when the plaintiff was arrested, he had a right to medical attention after that incident. And the officers, in essence, by not taking him to a hospital prior to taking him to the jail, violated his substantive due process rights.
The fifth claim is now where they're pulling in the municipality and the county, right, that they had failed to train, supervise, and discipline these officers. You get the idea there.
So the sixth claim for relief is a deprivation of rights in saying that the officers, by arresting the dad, were maliciously prosecuting him. Again, there's more that comes into play with that other than just the law enforcement officers, but also the prosecutors. But again, it's like a dartboard. You throw whatever you can out there and whatever sticks, sticks.
Yep. Number 7 is that the father had the right to remain silent, just like we all do. And he exercised that right. And as we talked about earlier, that he was retaliated against for exercising his constitutional right.
So the eighth claim is deprivation of rights in that the plaintiff was falsely arrested. Obviously, we saw the dad pull up behind his son, and he's saying that the officers falsely arrested him because he committed no criminal violations.
The 9th claim here has to do with they're saying that he was retaliated against for filming the officers. I don't think I caught that in the original video, but it seems like maybe they're saying the father was pulled out his cell phone and was recording the traffic stop, and as a result, he was retaliated against. He had the legal right to record that traffic stop, and that's that claim here. So those are the claims. That's what will be litigated here. Walk me through what the relief would be, or what they're asking for.
So twofold. There would be monetary damages in the form of the pain and suffering that the father endured, his medical bills. The stuff that you can't see as well, the emotional damage done to him as a result of the officer's conduct. But most importantly, injunctive relief. That's how you affect real systemic change. They're saying that these policies and, of the sheriff's department, in addition to the sheriff's deputies' repeated violations of those policies, there's something that was not happening at the top of that department to continue to allow these officers behave in a rogue and criminal manner. So whatever that injunctive relief is going to look like, we don't know. That's up to a judge and the both parties to agree upon and to enforce later on down the road.
Do you think that this case will go to trial, or there will be some sort of settlement reached?
I put it like this: think is a passive word. I believe wholeheartedly. If I am a defense attorney trying to defend this, I want to settle. If I'm a plaintiff's attorney, I want this case before a jury, because that is where we can get the injunctive relief, but at the same time, a big payday will likely come about.
The punitive damages,
Yes.
really. And let's talk just for a minute in closing here about the injunctive relief, because yes, we want the father to be compensated for this financially, but really, ideally, everyone's walking away from this with an actual change to these officers, to the policy. Is that something that comes out of these as a result of these cases?
Definitely. Change can be minor or it can be major. It can be minor in the fact that this, rogue officer can be fired and never be allowed to be a police officer ever again. Within that jurisdiction. Who knows what he may do outside of that. Or it may come in a major form in that, the sheriff's department completely revamps their entire department policies. They do stronger background checks on potential candidates that want to be sheriff's deputies. So, again, it's on either end of the spectrum. With
Training, retraining.
Yeah, training, retraining. Obviously, body-worn camera footage, encouraging your officers to intervene if they see another officer doing something that they're not supposed to.
Yeah, so a lot of good things do come out of these lawsuits other than just money,
No,
right?
for sure.
And obviously, we believe that this is a well-founded lawsuit, right? Not only quite strong, but with good reason. We knew that just by watching the body-worn camera. So there you have it, folks. That's our take, not only on this lawsuit, but also sort of our, as we thought through and re-looked at the body-worn camera, some of our points of clarification and our take on that. So we think you guys largely saw it right here, and this will be an interesting one to follow. We're going to do our best to keep up on this and give you an update when it comes. Thanks for watching.